Hello, everyone. What I have here is I want to give is a demo of the test-driven development. I think it's helpful to actually see it in place. Without it, it's kind of hard. It's very abstract. I'm going to show it in a setup where I'm just trying to write a single method. We're going to write a method to compute the median. By the way, we really probably shouldn't be going out and writing a median method. We should be finding it implemented somewhere in Ruby or in some library and using that. So just keep that in mind. But nevertheless, it's a good example to work with. I'm not going to do this inside of Rails. It's just going to keep it simple, but it's always the same sort of philosophy when it comes to unit testing and doing test-driven development. So I've got some files here, and I'm actually going to work in these files, editing them with Nano. I've been finding actually doing my editing in Nano to be a little bit more enjoyable than directly in the Codio editor. Watch out though, Nano doesn't automatically save your files. You're responsible for saving. There's some other gotchas. For most people, it's probably better to just keep using the Codio editor, but you can use the Nano one. And so if I was to look at my code, so I'm keeping the code here. I'm writing a class called stat functions, and I've got a method that's going to be a class method, so that's what the self.median is. So I can call it without instantiating the class, without creating a stat functions object. And I like to have Codio or the world setup where I have two windows. One is going to be for coding on the left, and on the right is where I'm going to do my testing. I'll just show you what I have for my tests right now. So I have this, it's set up, and so I have a class test stat functions. It inherits from mini-test test, so it's designed for testing with mini-test. Again, in Rails, the only difference is that we inherit from the classes that are designed for testing in Rails, where mini-test test is the very topmost class, and then all the others in Rails inherit from it. So this is just has the same basic things. And so yes, so in test-driven development, the first thing I'm supposed to do is I'm supposed to write my test. So what's a good test? I always think a good one is what happens if I just pass in a single number to the median method. What should it do? It should give me back that number. So I'm just going to write a test that's called test. I'm going to test the median, and I'm going to say it's one element. Okay, and it's often nice to remind ourselves that when we're doing testing, that first we arrange, and then we act, and then we assert. Okay, so it can be helpful sometimes to put some comments in when you're coding to guide yourself along, make a plan for what you're going to do. So for arrange, well, I'm going to make an array elements, and I'm going to put one element in it, the number 1. Then to act, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the result of calling. So this is over, if you look on the left-hand side, this is a module called testing example. And so I'm calling that module in it. I'm calling the class stat functions. And on that class, I'm calling the class method median. And I'm going to pass in the array elements. And then what should I assert? Well, I'm going to assert equal. And assert equal first is what I expect as my result, which is 1. So I expect 1 as my answer. And I'm going to compare that to what I received, the result. And so then I save my file, I exit, and then I can go and very easily, I need to include this, but then I go ahead and I'm going to run my test. And it says to me, you know, the expected was 1. So that's what this is here. It says, I expected 1, but you actually gave me 0. Well, why did it give you 0? Well, because I have nothing over here, and so then the default for the method is it returns 0. All right, so then I come back over here, and my job when writing my code, now that I have a failing test, is to write minimal code that actually passes. And so, you know, I could cheat if I wanted to. I could write return 1 and be like, hee hee hee, it works, and pass my test here just to show you. I'll do return 1, and I can run my test, and it passes. I get a little green now, a little green dot there. But that's not what we mean by write minimal code. We don't mean purposely write. I mean, some people could argue that you should do this. It means your test isn't good enough yet. I think it's reasonable to say, you know, I need to handle the case when values has a length equal to 1. You know, come on, like I can write better code, and this is the way I'm going to proceed at least. And so I'm going to return values, the first element there. Save that. So then I save my code there, and I run my test, and it says, whoa, wait a minute. Undefined local variable or method value. Yep. So I can see that over here, I made a typo. I save that, and then I run over here. Hey, and it passes. That's great. So then I look back here, and I say, do I want to refactor this? And I say, nope. It looks good to me. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to write another test now. So again, when we're doing all of our testing and mini test, our tests, we start them with the word test and then underscore. So now, heck, let's just continue the progression. 2 elements. All right. So if I'm going to test, my median method work with 2 things. So how about 2 and 1? And I'm just gonna go up here and grab some code. And so that runs it. Now, to know median, and to test it, to test it, you need to know how the median is supposed to work. So if I have only 2 elements, there is no element in the middle. So then you're supposed to find the 2 elements that are on each side of where the middle would be and take the average of them. So I know that the answer should be 1.5. Now, this should immediately raise some concerns. When it comes to testing equality of floating point numbers, so these things with the decimal points, we know that floating point numbers are often not exact inside the computer. Now, 1.5 might be, for all I know it. And in fact, if I wanted to, I could just run the test. And, I could run the test. It fails. It actually says undefined local variable or method for elements for, so I have a problem actually in my test. Yes, so elements is equal to this. See, I'm not working from a great script here. Anyways, I run the test and it says it's giving me 0 and it's expected 1.5. Now I could go over here and write this, but you know what? I want to first say, I know it's not proper to do an assert equal and to have a floating point number here. It just really isn't. Unless I know that exactly that number is being returned by some method. And what I mean by that is someone basically says return 1.5. So I could compute, 1 plus 2 divided by 2. So take 3 and divide it, and get that value and then compare it. And then maybe that would be a proper exact equal test. But I just really want to actually go to use the proper assert for floating point. And so I go, geez, what exactly is that? What am I supposed to remember? So you can see here, mini test, assert floating point. I come down, I've already looked this up, and it happens to be assert in delta. And so there's an expected float and then the actual float. And you could specify a delta, but it actually has a default. So it's assert in delta. All right, so assert in delta 1.5 result. I'm going to save that, exit. I'm going to run my test to make sure I test. It says a type error, nil cannot be coerced into float. So there, it's saying that my method is returning nil, but you know what? I'm not allowed to return a nil to actually compare it to the float. So the problem is over here in the median method. So I come over here and and it's like, I already know about doing the median. It's all these cases where we're going to run into this thing where I don't really have a middle element in the set of values. And so I need to find out if it's even or not. Now, I also happen to know that to do the median and find that I need to sort those values. So I'm going to do, and I'll tell you, look, I don't actually remember in Ruby what about sorting that I need to know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop down here. I'm going to exit. I'm going to quick run IRB. And I'm going to say, A is equal to 2, 1. So A, I've made a little array. Now if I call a.sort, okay, it gives it sorted. But now let me check A again. Did it change? No, A does not change. Now, I could remember, oh yeah, we could do a force it. And I do a.sort. And now what is A? A does actually change. So the sort bang or exclamation mark, whatever you want to call it, that does actually mutate and change the array. Sort itself just returns a copy of it sorted. So now that I've refreshed my memory about that, I come back here and I go, what do I want to do? Well, if I do the sort bang, the one that mutates and changes the actual array values, that's kind of mean to anyone calling me. They just want the median back from me. They don't want me to actually change their object, their array that they've passed in. So I should not do that. So I should do values is equal to values dot sort. I should sort the thing. And with keep a copy of it, but not actually mutate and change theirs with the sort bang. All right. The fewer side effects that you can have in your code when you're writing, the better. So yeah, don't go changing the things passed into you unless you make it really clear to people that you're going to be changing what they've passed into you. Anyway, so I've done that. Now, it's all these cases of, I know that is the array have an even number of elements or an odd number of elements. And you know what? If we were in Java, I'd go and say, well, I know I have to do a modulus and figure out whether it's even or not. But you know what? We're not. We're in Ruby. And so I come here to the good old Google even or odd. And you know, hey, it says the even method. Oh, that's so exciting. So I'm just going to come into here, if values dot even, great. So if I have an even number of values, I'm going to say the sort of this midpoint. I'm going to have to take the values dot length. All right, divide by 2. And then immediately I go, huh, what's that going to do? I don't really remember in Ruby. So again, what happens when I go and do integer? Will I get integer division, or will I get, so will, if I do 21 divided by 2, by the way, so what will I get? Ooh, I get 10. I don't get 10.5. So that tells me that, and then I can test this. I do 2.0, and then I get the 10.5, and it reminds me, all right, yeah. So that's the way Ruby works with integer division. If I have two integers, I will get integer division. If one of them was float, I'll get float. Very similar to what we're used to in Java and other languages. So that's good to know. I always want to double check, make sure my understanding is correct. So then I think about it, and I'm like, so if I have an array that's an even number of elements, like say it's 4 long, and I divide by 2, of course I get 2. Now, I realize that my arrays start with an index of 0. So the point that I really want is I want the values 1 and 2. And so, all right, so I'm going to come back here to my code. And so the midpoint, it's not really, that's not what I want to say is the midpoint. I want one less than that, a -1. And so then I want to say my result is going to be values mid, all right, plus values mid plus 1. For some reason, it just feels better for me to work from sort of the left to the right and add 1 to it. I could have just done divide by 2 and subtracted 1, I guess, but it just makes me feel better. And we like to feel good. All right, so we do the result. We've got that. Now I'm going to return the result. Now you might wonder why didn't I just return this in and of itself? This is because what I've learned when it comes to debugging is that what I want is I want to do a computation, and I want to store it so that when I step through it with the debugger, I can inspect that value before. So for example, if I return directly up, if I had something like here where I return this, it's a lot harder for me to check what that value is because it's going to be right away returned. So instead, I find it so much nicer. I go ahead, I put it in a variable, then I return it. And you know what? You might say, oh, is going to lose some efficiency? The answer is absolutely not. Especially if we were working in a compiled language, a compiler would go, well, I know I don't really, it'll shortcut all of this, but for debugging purposes, this is great. So don't worry about the efficiency here. This is nice. It puts its value in the result. I could inspect it in a debugger before I actually left the method, which is really nice. So I'm going to save this code. Now I come back over here and I run my test, and it says it doesn't work. Oh, it says undefined method even. Oh, well, there's no method even on values. It has to be values.length. So what I think is kind of nice about this is even working with the testing, you can see like, oh yeah, you're running your code and you're writing a test, and you're going to make mistakes in how you do stuff. And so it's nice that it forces you to check on your code pretty quickly. I run it, and it still doesn't like it. Expected result, expected 1.5 minus 1 due to be Blank divided by 2 minus 1, values mid, mid plus 1, divided by 2, to be this difference. That's just weird. Like, what am I doing? Let me go look at my code, my test again. Assert in delta 1.5 in my result. You know, it just makes me wonder, like, what in the world am I doing? I don't know. So I'm just going to stick in bug in here. I exit, and I'm going to run my test again. And this lets me debug my test. So now I'm in bug. Hit N for next. And if I wanted to, I could check to see that elements does have 2 and 1 in it. All right. Now, I could go and step into the median by doing S. And you see I'm over here now. And so I come into here. It doesn't do that. We go and we sort it. I can check out what values is. It's now 1 and 2. Is the length even? The answer is yes. So now I'm going to do that. And the mid, what is mid equal to? Mid is 0. Okay. So I expect the next calculation here. I see what I've done wrong. I expected the next calculation for result to be 1.5, but if I print out result, what do I get? The value 1. Why? Because I can see now that I did integer division. I divided by 2. So I'm just going to hit C to continue, and it runs. What I'm going to do is I come back over here to my code, and I fix this. Divide by 2.0. And I save that code, run my test again. Well, actually, before I run my test, I'm going to go in here and get rid of the bug. I don't need it there anymore. And I'm going to run my test. Hey, my test passes. I got 2 little green dots. That's exciting. What do I do now? I go write another test. So I'm just going to continue this progression. Let's try 3 elements. That'll mean I test the median with an odd number of elements now. Again, let's just be lazy. Sometimes lazy is good. And go ahead and add a 3 to it. Now, one of the things you'll note is I purposely know when I'm writing these tests that a common mistake someone could make in writing median is to assume that the values coming in are already sorted. So I'm careful. I already know that when I'm testing not to do that, because if it already comes in sorted, I won't catch the bug that someone might make if they fail to remember to sort the values before trying to find the median. So, you know, when you write these tests, it does pay a lot to basically have in mind what you know to be the solution. It's entirely possible, though, that you might not, and then your testing might be inadequate. But think about how to break people's software, you know. So yeah, you know, if I was to implement this, I bet if someone was as stupid as me, they might just assume the values are already sorted. All right. So don't, you know, you gotta write your tests with a sort of a mindset that's like, you know, I want to really, you know, you're not testing and being foolish in your testing. You're really working to penetrate and find those bugs. All right, so now I do 3 elements, and now the median should be exactly the value 2. So I'm going to go back to assert equal. Actually, before I do this, well, let's just do this. Save this, exit, run my code, and it says, you know, expected 2, I got a nil. And that's because I don't have anything to handle the odd length ones. So let's just add an else here. Now my middle is, and we want to find the exact middle. So, you know, what I do is I go back to IRB and I think, you know, let's see, if I had an array of length 3 and I divide by 2, I get a value of 1. The array elements are 0, 1, and 2. So divide by 2 is all I need to do to find that middle element. So I come back into my code and I go mid is values dot length divide by 2. And great, that's wonderful. So now in this case, because it's just the mid element and I'm not going to have to do a computation, I'm just going to go ahead and write my code to return result mid, because that's still, once I know what the mid is, I could always get that value, and before I return, I could inspect result mid and see what the value is that's going to be returned. Great. So I don't really need to put it in another variable first to help my debugging. All right, so I'm going to come over here, run my tests now, and it doesn't like something. Undefined method, something, oh, of course, because it's not return result, it's return value. Okay, boy, you'd think I'm trying to make mistakes, but I'm not. And I get my 3 cool dots. Now, one of the things you see that I haven't really been stressing is, oh, what about the refactoring? And this is a point in time when I really do. I look at this code and I say, this looks bad to me. I've got this mid, which is computed to be this, and I have this mid, which is this. And it's like, if I'm really talking about mid and I'm picking good variable names, it should kind of mean the same thing, but it obviously does not mean the same thing. So I'm going to call this actually left of mid. I like that because it expresses my idea in my head that I wanted the left of the middle element. Great. So I've done that. I save that code, and now I've done my little refactoring, and now I can run this. Woo! Still 3 green dots. I must not have made a mistake when I did my refactoring, and it's still good. I'm happy. Is there anything else that I want to change in this code? You know, it is redundant to have the if the value's length is equal to 1, and then later I deal with odd length arrays. So if I wanted to simplify my code, I could get rid of that first if statement and it should still work. And then I could run my test and see if it goes. But I also, you know, I can leave it in there and it short circuits and it saves all that calling to sort, copying a new values array, dividing the length of 1 by 2 to find out that it's just 0 and returning. You know, is it good to have it in there as sort of a optimization for speed? Or is it bad because it adds more lines of code and clutters things up and potentially makes maintenance of the function worse? At the moment, I just feel like I don't want to change things. I think it's okay the way it is. So I'm just going to leave it the way it is right now. But I need more tests. Definitely not done with testing yet. So always occurs to me, what's going to happen if someone passes me a 0 length array? So no elements. Well, again, let me get myself some code here. And we're going to make 0 elements. What should actually happen? And I'm like, uh-oh, you know, the median's not defined. What's the median of nothing? So now it comes to a design question. I might I might have to go back and come up with a new sort of specification. What should the behavior of my method be? And imagine that we could write this or talk with teammates about it. But the basic thing here is going to be, all right, I'm basically going to end up doing the specification in the test right now. So I actually believe that it should raise an error. It should throw an exception, basically, and say, you shouldn't have passed me this. The median method does not handle arrays of 0 length. I think it would actually be wrong to return like 0 is the answer. That's not the answer. The median of nothing has no definition. We should not process that as a proper input. So I know I'm going to need to raise an exception. And I don't know, like, well, which one should it be? You know, so it's like Ruby raise exception. I'm gonna say something arguments. I know there's got to be something. When we look, by the way, I don't know. Oh, I like this one. Argument error. And I've actually already read this page, and it's what I want. Take a look and see what goes down here. I see, oh, I get to call it by raise argument error new, and then I pass in the message that I want to complain about. Great. So I come back here. And so I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to first check my code. So if values dot length is 0, then what I want to do is I want to raise an argument error and say that median requires an array with 1 or more elements. I don't know, sounds good to me. And end, you know, done. Oh, I was naughty. I wrote my code first before finishing my test. Oops. So I'm gonna come back to my test now. And I'm like, geez, how do we do that in Ruby with mini tests to handle the assert? You know, you can actually see I've already done it, but it's assert raises. But how did I find it? I actually think I found it. Assert, you know, exception, you know, assert exception. Oh, I need to be in Ruby though, not in these other languages. I see it's assert raise, but careful, that says it's test unit. So the different testing frameworks have different assertions. I need to find the mini test one. So maybe I add mini test here, and I come mini test assertions. That's one good place to look. I can see here, yeah, so we have assert raises. All right, so assert raises, and I don't really know how to use that from that. I don't like that. Is there something better here? Not really. So, you know, come down here. You know, a detailed mini test tutorial. Is this gonna have it? Oh, yeah. So basically, the idea is assert raises. You put in the type of error, and then yes, and then you have to have a block. I see. Okay. So I'd say assert raises. It's going to be, I want an argument error when this happens. And now I can do blocks. You can do them with the curly braces, or we can use a do and an end. And I kind of like the do and the end here. It looks nicer. So assert raises argument error, then do and an end. And so I'm going to pass that in, and there's no need for another assert. That is what I'm asserting. I'm asserting that I get an argument error, exit, run my test. I got 4 dots. It passes. You know, that's great. I need another test though. What if someone just passes in nil to me? I think that deserves an argument error too. So def, so I'm just going to quickly go ahead and grab this guy. This time, instead of empty, it's going to be nil, and then it's going to say median nil, and it should give me an argument error too. So I do that. All right, let's give it a run. Oops, sorry. I run the code, and it says, you didn't do that. Like, what? Huh? It is, I get an undefined method length. Well, it's actually, problem is I'm passing nil in, and this first thing over here raises an exception. So actually, I'm just going to modify this. Since I know they're both supposed to raise an exception, I'm going to do values. And then we can ask if it's nil in Ruby by just doing .nil question mark. And I'm going to use or. Or here, this Boolean or, these are short circuiting, so that if nil is true, we'll never actually call values.length. So I won't actually run into that problem. So I can actually write this in one expression, which is quite nice. I'm going to save that code, come over here again, and I'm going to run my test. Yeah, I now have 5 green dots. I'll look at this code, and is there anything that I want to clean up, make it look nicer? You know, I could, we could string together these 2 if statements. I don't feel any great need for that. Clean up a little space there, make it look nicer. It seems pretty good. I'm a little bothered. Like, is there any case where, what I do is I have this thing where I'm doing all these cases, but what if I've missed one of the cases? What if there's some way that my code could get down to the end here? That does it. It kind of bothers me. I actually want to, like, I'd like to write code so that if I'm checking a bunch of cases, but if I've missed a case, possible input, I want to raise an error that says I actually have a bug. So I could very much rewrite this. And this maybe makes me feel like, maybe I really should just get rid of this values equals 1. The length equals 1 business, and really just have, or I could actually put onto this down here that says, it's not just an else. Well, actually, no, this is actually pretty good because I am saying, I'm wrong. I look at this. So if we make it here, it's I'm either going to do this branch or I'm going to do this branch. There's no other possible case. So it's either even or it's not even. So I will have handled all the cases. So that's not a problem. I don't know what I was thinking. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead, run this guy. It's still good. Could I think about any other test cases? If I was to come up with one more, maybe we should pass in something, with floats, mixture of floats and some other values, but I mean, if I wanted to, I could, I could even, we could come into here and I could repeat this. So I could do elements is equal to, 2.5, 1.2, 3.6. All right. And then I could go ahead and copy these guys, copy this. And now I happen to know that what I want to do here is I want to compute the expected result, because it's, well, no, it's actually just going to be 1.2. That's not a cool test. All right, I'm kind of wasting time here. Let's just stop this. You know, it might be a good idea to test some floating point values as well. You know, I don't know if it'll actually change anything. You know, here, we could even just modify this test to be, 1.5 and 2.1. You know, I'm going to say average is equal to elements 0 plus elements 1 divided by 2.0. And I expect to get an answer which is the average here. You know, I could have done that, or I could have copied the whole test and called it something else, because I've kind of gotten rid of a whole case. I don't like that I did that. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go back to my one nice clean little test here. This is 1.5, and I have this test 2 elements here. And exit. I'm gonna run my tests. They all pass. Yay, raw. I mean, we can come up with variations, but does it make sense for me to test passing in strings? Well, no. Is it gonna break? Yes. If I pass in an array filled with strings or pass in other weird stuff, it's going to break. But that's like, it's breaking because you're doing something really foolish with median. I think passing in a nil is a common enough mistake to catch. I think passing in an array of length 0 is a good thing to catch, because those are mistakes I think people are going to make, and it's just easy enough to say, I know you passed in something you thought median might handle. You might think that passing a nil should give you back a 0, or you might think that an empty array should give you back 0. I'm going to be really explicit with you. It does not. So, and I'm going to give you a little message that tells you that this, what I really expect. Now, if you pass me in an array filled with strings or other strange objects, well, things are going to crash. But that's just the way it goes. We can't test all those crazy inputs. Those are sort of out of the bounds. So we always want to think of what are the reasonable things to test on the arguments for the input correctly or not. Yeah. All right. That's basically test-driven development. And so now I can exit my code. I feel like my code is well written. I don't want to refactor it. If I did, or if anyone wanted to go in there and change it, the nice thing is we have this whole new nice set of tests, and you can see I ended up writing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 tests to test one method. That's pretty common. So all right, that's test-driven development, a demo of it. Very good.